Good afternoon, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this Regulatory and Appeal Committee meeting. Our councillor Yunus is here, Chairman of the Regulatory and Appeals Committee. To my right, my Vice Chairman, Councillor Stephen Stewart. Oops, I'm sorry, Stephen Evans, Stewart Evans.
Can you go back a bit closer? Picking up in the
Before we start the meeting, I need to run through a few housekeeping details. I would like to remind everyone in attendance this afternoon that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube. Please note that this meeting will be transcribed and assist with the preparation of minutes. By remaining in the room, you are giving your consent to the transcription. When addressing this meeting, please ensure that you do so with the microphone system at all times. You do not need to move or adjust the microphone. Simply raise your hand as usual, wait to be called, and then press the temporal button to activate your microphone before speaking. Speak clearly and directly so everyone in the room, remote participants and recordings can hear you. When finished, press the button again to turn it off. Mobile phones should be turned off or switched to silent mode. Restroom facilities are available for ladies on this floor and halfway down to the main stairwell for gentlemen. In the event of fire alarms sounding often, will escort everybody out of the building to the nearest fire safety point in the car park. Members of the public are free to leave the meeting at any time. Please raise your hand if you wish to leave and be patient whilst a member of staff comes to collect you. Finally, please be advised that abuse or intimidation of any kind will not be tolerated. Any disturbance will result in the meeting being adjourned. Anyone who's deemed to breach these requirements will be warned and asked to refrain. And in the behavior persist, they will be required to leave the meeting. Now we'll move to our part one of the agenda that Are there any apologies?
Yes, Madam Chair, apologies have been received from councillors James Cantwell, Anne Dorian, Neil Drayton and Paul Gleeson.
Does any member wish to declare any interest of respect of any item of agenda? Do I have permission to sign the minutes of the Regulatory and Appeals Committee meeting held on the 11th of March 2025?
3 days.
Are there any questions from members of the public received 2 clear working days prior to the meeting?
There are none, Madam Chair.
Thank you. There is one agenda item this afternoon, and that is application for the grant of the sexual entertainment venue license in respect of the Full Shed Marsh Farm Cottage, London Rose, London, Boston, which starts on page 3 of the agenda pack. Before we begin, it would be helpful to the public if everyone seated at the committee table would introduce themselves, beginning with the council's president, then the applicant and the representative, and then the officer's president. Also, Lincolnshire police are present to assist if members have any points of clarification for them, but they are not participating as a responsible authority. In addition, each placement has a list of members of the public who are interested parties and have registered to address the committee. Shall we start with the Councillor John?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. My name is Councillor John Baxter.
I'm Councillor Andy Isard.
Good afternoon, I'm Councillor Helen Staples. Good afternoon, I'm Councillor Suzanne Borough.
Good afternoon, Councillor Stephen, wasn't it?
Councillor Jonathan Noble. Councillor Richard Austin.
I need to press the button. You'll hear me okay. I'm Brad Shackleston, solicitor for the applicant. I have with me on my right a colleague, Rizwana Akhtar, who's also a solicitor, who's here to watch and learn. And I have the applicant, Neil Wright, and also Michelle Wright, who's involved in the management of the premises in question.
Thank you. Anne McDowell, Senior Licensing Officer.
Jim Robertson, Legal Advisor.
Thank you. I will now ask the committee legal advisor to read the hearing procedure which will be followed today. The details are also set out in the agenda. I would also like to remind members that if they wish to discuss the likely disclosure of excited information, I will be necessary to move to the private session and exclude the public interest.
Thank you, Chair. So firstly, Anna will present a report, copies of which you will have in front of you. Members of the committee can then ask questions of the senior licensing officer in respect of the information they've received. Then it will be for the applicant to address the committee to present their case and for any witnesses that you may have in support. Then it will be interested parties who have registered to speak and can ask questions of the applicant. Then members of the committee can ask questions of the applicant and witnesses. And then, excuse me, the applicant will then be given a chance to hear if anything raised in question. As the chair has said, the police are here, but they are not going to address the committee in respect of the matter today, but they are available for questions from the committee only. So the next thing on the agenda, the procedure will be the interested parties, and there's the those persons who have registered to speak. They can present their case in turn and call any witnesses they may have. So after they've addressed the committee, the applicant can ask questions of those interested parties, and then the committee members can ask questions of the interested parties, and then they will be asked to hear if anything raised in the question. Please note that there should be no cross-examination. This is a discussion-led hearing today. The chairman will then invite closing submissions from the senior licensing officer, the applicant, and responsible authorities. Sorry, not responsible authorities, and interested parties. No new issues should be introduced at that stage. I will then be asked if there's any matters to be raised or resolved before the committee decides to begin its deliberations. And the chair will then ask that members of the committee will consider the report in private and make their decision. I will remain with them as their legal advisor, will not take part in the deliberations. Should I give any legal advice during the deliberations, the decision notice will contain details of that one. Then everyone will be asked to come back into the room, and once the decision has been made, the reason for the decision will be formally notified in writing to all parties. Again, just to reiterate, if anyone is going to address the committee about anything in confidence, and generally that's going to be location of objectives or anything specific like that, please, before you start to speak, can you ask the committee for their permission to go into a private session? They will need to vote on that, so please do that before anyone speaks. Thank you, Chair.
As the senior licensing officer, Anna McDowell to present the report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're here today to consider an application for sexual entertainment venue licence. Hearing referred to simply as a licence. It's recommended that the committee consider all of the information available and determine the application in accordance with the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act of 1982, also having due regard to council policy and government guidance on sexual entertainment venues. The reason for this recommendation is that the council's scheme of delegation requires that all new licence applications are determined by the Regulatory and Appeals Committee. The report outlines an application for a licence submitted by Mr. and Mrs. Wright. It also refers to the council's policy and provides other pertinent information Specific to this application, it outlines the licensing process. A license is required by any premises providing relevant entertainment. The Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act defines relevant entertainment as any live performance or live display of nudity which is of a source that, ignoring financial gain, it must be reasonably assumed to be provided solely or principally for the purpose of sexually stimulating any member of an audience. An audience may consist of just one person, and a copy of Schedule 3 of that Act is attached to Appendix 1 for your information. The Council has adopted specific licensing requirements which came into force in 2011. The general effect of adopting the provisions is that in order to operate, the venue must hold a licence. The Council policy sets the maximum number of establishments within the Borough at 1, and there are no other licensed premises in the Borough at this time. And a copy of our policy is attached at Appendix 2. The legislation states that when considering applications, the local authority will have regard to any observations submitted by the interested police, and also have regard to any objections that have been received from anyone else during the statutory consultation period. Schedule 3 of the Act states that a licence must not be granted if the applicant is aged under 18, if the applicant is qualified from holding a licence on the grounds that the licence held by them within the Borough has previously been revoked within the last 12 months, that the applicant is not resident in a European Economic Area state or was not so in the 6 months prior to the submission of the application, that the applicant is a body corporate which is not incorporated in the European Economic State Area, or that the applicant has within the 12 months preceding the application been refused the grant or renewal of a licence. And I can confirm that none of these points apply in respect to this application. The Act also prescribes grounds on which an application may be refused, and these are that the applicant is not suitable, having been convicted of an offence or for any other reason. If the licence would be granted, that the business would be managed for the benefit of a person other than the applicant, where that other person would be refused the grant of the licence themselves, where the number of licensed premises is equal to or exceeds the number which the local authority has considered appropriate, or that the grant of the licence would be inappropriate, having regard to the character of the relevant locality, the use to which any premises in the vicinity are put, or the layout, character or condition of the premises in respect of which the application is made. With respect to the character of the locality, this Council's policy states, in considering the characteristics of the locality, we should take into account the density and proximity of residential accommodation, parks and children's play areas, other retail units and their uses, schools and nurseries, religious and community buildings, and alcohol or entertainment licensed premises. Committee members should be aware that purely moral objections or concerns cannot be taken into account and must not form part of the decision-making process. In making the determination, the Council has the power to prescribe standard conditions which may relate to a number of matters, including the hours of opening, displays of advertisements, and visibility of the interior of the establishment to passers by. Licences may be granted for a maximum period of up to 1 year. An application was received on the 17th of November 2026 from Mr. and Mrs. Wright for a new licence at the Porsche March Farm Cottage, Brampton Roads. A copy of the application was attached to Appendix 3. In December, the applicant met with licensing officers from the Council and Lincolnshire Police to discuss their application. It was agreed during this meeting that they do not intend to employ any performers to carry out relevant entertainment, and subsequently the application was amended to remove table dancing and also confirm that any relevant entertainment would be exclusively by way of consenting customers participating in activities, with the audience consisting of other customers who may also choose to join in. The amended application seeks authorisation for the provision of pole dancing, lap dancing, striptease and live sex shows during the following times: Wednesday, Thursday and Sunday and bank holidays, 11 AM until 10 PM. Friday and Saturday, 11 a.m. until 2 a.m. the following day. The applicant was required to submit additional information, including any unspent convictions for themselves, management, or any other person who financially benefits from the business. This information did not reveal any unspent convictions for any named individual. In respect of the premises, the property is in the parish of Frampton, which is a rural village consisting of approximately 460 residential properties. The premises is located approximately 2.5 miles from the nucleus of the village and sits in relatively close proximity to 4 neighbouring properties. The proposed licence area is contained within a large warehouse on private property. The licensed area consists of 2 floors, with the ground floor containing bar, dance floor, kitchen, pool room, sauna, shower and changing area, and an outdoor swimming pool. The first floor consists of a large lounge area with projector and adjacent bedroom areas. The internal area of the premises cannot be viewed from the outside of the building, with the exception of the rear facade, which sits adjacent to a large agricultural field behind hedges which are approximately 8 feet tall. An outdoor swimming pool area is situated behind high walls and hedges. A location plan and exterior views of the premises are attached to Appendix 4 for your consideration. In April 2023, the subcommittee of the Licensing Committee determined an application for premises applied for under the provisions of the Licensing Act. The application sought a licence for the sale of alcohol, provision of regulated entertainment, and letting out refreshment. The hearing was held following the receipt of relevant representations. The subcommittee determined to grant the licence, and a copy of the decision notice and premises licence are attached to appendices 5 and 6, respectively. Where complaints are received in relation to licensable activities authorised by that premises licence, the authority will investigate and take relevant action in accordance with the provisions of the Licensing Act. At the time of writing this report, the Council and Lincolnshire Police had not received any specific complaints in respect of the premises licence. Following the grant of the premises licence, the number of swings events significantly increased, and it was determined that the venue is now clearly operating as a commercial enterprise and that the activities carried out are to an extent that they require a sexual entertainment venue licence. The applicants had previously held private parties at the venue for a number of years without the requirement of such a licence. When the application was submitted, there was a 28-day window during which representation could be received. An objection has been received from the Lincolnshire Police and formalises the amendment to the application as detailed in paragraph 2.1.2 of the report and highlights issues with the relevance of the standard conditions detailed in the policy. In principle, Lincolnshire Police do not object to the grant of a licence. However, they have requested a number of conditions that are more appropriate to the intended operation and request that the committee impose these conditions and disapply those listed in the council policy should a licence be granted. And a copy of the police's representation is attached as Appendix 7. Objections have also been received from a number of individuals who have raised concerns relating to the premises. The identity of those objectors will not be disclosed in the public domain. However, members of the committee have been provided with details to ensure the deliberations remain relevant to any potential impact caused by the provision of relevant entertainment. The objections are of a similar nature and raise concerns in relation to some of the following points. Increased traffic flow through the village, alleged noise nuisance from vehicles travelling through the village late at night, the suitability of such a premises within the village, a possible perceived impact on property values, and perceived reputational damage to the village by association. However, a full copy of those representations is attached to Appendix 8 for members' consideration. In addition to that, the location of objectors is shown on the plan attached at Appendix 8A. Members will be able to discuss concerns raised today. Officers and legal support are in attendance to answer any questions in relation to their relevance in terms of determination of the application. Additionally, 3 emails in support of the application from customers and business have been received and are attached to Appendix 9. In making a determination, members must consider the following points. Licensable activities authorised under the Licensing Act are to be dealt with in accordance with the Licensing Act and should not be matters for consideration in relation to the application being determined today. In determining the application, the committee should be aware of and take into account any implications that may arise under the Human Rights Act of 1998. Under this Act, it is unlawful for a public authority to act in a manner compatible with the European Convention on Human Rights. In particular, the Home Office SEV guidance for England and Wales states, when determining an application, the local authority must have regard to any rights the applicant may have under Article 10, right to freedom of expression, and Article 1, Protocol 1, protection of property of the European Convention on Human Rights. A copy of the Home Office guidance is attached to Appendix 10, and Article 10 of the Human Rights Act is attached to Appendix 11. And I've also provided Igor with a copy of Article 1, Protocol 1, which isn't in the report. In respect of appeal, where a licence is refused on the grounds listed in 1 to 7 of paragraph 1.7 within the report, the applicant shall not have a right of appeal unless they seek to show the grounds did not apply to them. Where a licence is refused on either of the grounds specified in points 8 to 9 of paragraph 1.7, the applicant has no right to appeal. However, full appeal provisions are set out in paragraph 27, appendix 1. If the licence is granted and the licence holder is aggrieved by any term, condition or restriction, they may appeal that point to the Magistrates Court within 21 days of receiving the written decision. In conclusion, an application for grant of a licence has been received must be determined by the committee in accordance with statutory decisions and having due regard to council policy and procedure and Home Office guidance. In making the determination, the committee must have due regard to objections received in respect of the proposed licensable activities. And objections based on moral grounds or values or not relevant to the grounds set out in paragraph 1.7 should not be considered. Thank you, Madam Chair. That concludes my report.
Do any members have any questions for the senior licensing officer?
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask, I have a few questions. Would you prefer that I swan, get the answer, or pass it on, or can I sort of mention all the questions together? Which would be best for you?
I have no preference.
So thank you. Having read some of the documents and sort of, I felt that there was an indication from some residents who felt that the notices, the application, the consultation period hadn't been adhered to. So can I just ask, in your opinion, were all the rules and regulations followed as regards consultation, opportunities to express opinions, please?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Baxter. Yeah, this was raised quite early on in the application process. The application notice was seen to be in place within 24 hours of the application. I understand it may have blown down at some point, however, as soon as this was notified to the applicant, it was put back up. I discussed this with my manager and we were happy that the advertisement that they complied with all the things that we needed to comply with. It was advertised in the local paper and we were satisfied that it was up for 21 days during that 28-day consultation period.
Thank you. So in effect, the consultation rules were adhered to.
We were satisfied, so yes.
The next question would be, as I've read, and you've mentioned this, the granting of a license would be inappropriate having regard to the character of the locality. Something I know that's very important to the local resident. It mentions as well, in accordance with the council policy, in considering the characteristics of the locality, we shall take account of the density and proximity and its excellent residential accommodation, etc. As I read that, actively open to interpretation there as regards to their document. I wonder, has there been any case law or any sort of rules and regulations that set a criteria? For example, the definition of residential accommodation is a house within 1 mile, or some other sort of criteria. And that's very important because otherwise it could be open to interpretation. The character of the relevant locality for me is better to somebody who lives there, maybe some of the others. So I just thought I would mention that.
Yeah, thank you. It's a very good question. The guidance on the meaning of locality is quite vague. Our policy considers the locality to be the borough, so we've set that limit as 1 for the entire borough. In terms of what we mean in relevant locality in a closer sense, in a more concentrated sense, we just have to take into account the density and proximity of those characteristics that are listed in our policy. But it's a very subjective question. I think Kim will probably give you some legal advice on that when we get to determination.
Okay, thank you. Can I come on, Chair, or did you want me to say Grant? I mentioned that having lots of indication of the premises, traffic and noise, which I appreciate. So I wonder though, within the remit of this submission, traffic and noise would be something we take into account. That we left to the police. If people had a problem at 2 o'clock, there was noise or whatever, or parking on somebody's driveway, that would be a police action, not something we take into consideration. That would be.
It would be something that we wouldn't be able to seek control by way of licence conditions. High speed vehicles would certainly be a police matter. If it was actually one of the vehicles at the premises, we could have a help look at it from a noise control point of view.
Okay, so if people had sort of complaints, there is still consideration. Hopefully, by discussing with the applicants their issues and providing together, the applicants have been quite considering this is what people say. So that can be taken up with authorities there.
I think people should be reassured that where they are suffering issues with noise, there are mechanisms in place for Borough to investigate and deal with them, and we will do that. So if somebody's suffering with noise from, music or late night activities, we will deal with that under the Licensing Act. By way of looking at statutory nuisance. If the statutory nuisance is then evidence, Environmental Health as responsible authority can submit a review of the premises licence application with a review to maybe suspending that activity, removing an activity, or suspending the licence, or putting in further control.
So to conclude, that would be something that we take into account when it comes to this application. It's outlet.
Yeah, music and entertainment and alcohol specifically for under the remit of the licensing.
Yeah, just last question. But I read the police report and I noticed in the written application it said Tuesday, but that really crossed out. So presumably as part of the police recommendations, it was decided not to run the establishment on a Tuesday.
That's to bring it in line with their planning permission.
Okay. So I just would mention as well, there's lots of conditions that the police recommended, presumably on their experience, then with establishments like this. Then when it comes to the committee decision, then you have to decide either to accept it as it's listed or to turn it down, or there is another option is to accept it within, but include the conditions all listed in the police report.
It's within the committee's gift to make whatever determination they see appropriate. Lincolnshire Police asked for a reflection of the conditions that are currently listed on the premises licence that was issued under the Licensing Act. So they would match, they would mirror one another.
And that would help if the applicant meets those conditions. If any resident takes actually have objections, if they agree to those conditions, that would be a consideration.
Yeah, the applicant has in principle agreed to those conditions with Lincolnshire Police and those discussions that were held in December.
Thank you.
Councillor Williams?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The question with that was it may have been asked by John, not gone back to already, but essentially, it comes back to the assessment of the character of the relevant locality. Was that section 2.27 of the Home Office guidelines? This actually is put on the 3.3 we can't be an entire local authority area. That's a contradiction what we've done.
I believe that's the case law that was introduced, that it went to court after our policy was done, so we probably need a review of the policy to the extent of the locality. Yeah, so I think, yeah, it's just in case law that's put into force after our policy and it's never been flagged.
So our policy will have to be amended, won't it, to get some of the
Yeah.
I mean, you have produced an assessment of the character of the locality. It's somewhat very good. Really talks about the number of properties, essentially. How else would you describe the relevance? How would you describe the character of the relevant locality?
It's a very good question because the guidance is as detailed as it is, and that's something for the committee to determine what their opinion is. It's not for me to make a decision on whether it's appropriate for the character of the locality because it's not a decision that sits with me in the delegated powers. So I can only give you the guidance that's there in our policy and in the legislation, and Kim will be able to give you a legal opinion on that.
I mean, in comparison, say, with the town, Borough, nature of the activities can carry on to that, with that bit within the guidelines of relevant.
I think with version on determination here, Kim, I think it's, sorry, Kim.
I'm just asking a question about the assessment of character of the area, not making a determination.
I think, Councillor, you'll need to listen to the applicant. I'm sure they'll have some representation from motions. I'm sure the interested parties, but it's for the committee in your deliberations to make a determination on that. And I think
Well,
can't answer.
I'm not making a determination. I'm really referring back to the act or the guidance from what is guidance. That's what I'm looking at. I'm
Maybe.
not.
Councillor, you need to listen to what everyone has to say in respect to, because it's a subjective test, you need to listen to what everyone has to say to be able to reach your own
I'm
conclusion.
not making a conclusion yet. Sorry, we work to find out.
No,
It's not information about the home office guideline. That's all. I'm not giving a judgment about anything else. There is no judgment.
I think when you make the judgment, as well, but not now, when you deliberate later.
Can we stop this now, if you don't mind?
Have you worked on it? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Well, number one, we have, oh, sorry. Yeah. Is that not,
I was waiting for the other big finish meeting. Because it's been polite.
Oh, yeah.
Just a, thank you. Yeah, it's just a question. Obviously, we have a department because not on the council of environmental health. Do we have any record of there ever being any complaints up to this point about the existing venue and noise of it or not? Is there anything on record about that? Thank you.
So at the point of the application being received, there were no complaints to either the licensing department, the environmental health department, or to the CFPAs. Since the application has been submitted, it has been raised that there have been alleged noise issues. This was communicated to the applicant, and the complainant has been asked to keep records of that so that we can get the wheels in motion to start dealing with that if it is evidence that there was a problem. But at the moment, it's unsubstantiated because we have to go through the process of getting those records in, and then environmental health will review it with the noise to view to getting noise monitoring equipment to establish the extent of any nuisance.
do you want anyone else? No? So number one, I will ask the applicant to address the committee at this and that case.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. As you are, I act for the applicant, Mr. Wright. And as you're aware, this is an application for the S&B sexual entertainment venue licence. Effectively, this is to regulate or formalise a business that's actually already been in operation. So I briefly need to sort of explain the history as to how we've got here. I'm aware from at least around 2014 that there used to be private parties at this address where, by invitation, people attended, and it was very much a private function. It did not need to be regulated. There was alcohol consumption, but people brought their own alcohol to the party, so it didn't need to be regulated either for the purposes of the Licensing Act and nor as a sexual entertainment venue. What then happened was that Mr. and Mrs. Bright wanted to effectively to police and manage the alcohol consumption, and therefore decided to put a bar on the premises that would sell the intoxicating liquor. And so the individuals were not bringing alcohol to the premises anymore. And so in 2023, they made a formal application for a premises license, which deals with, as you probably know, the consumption of alcohol and certain regulated entertainment, like the playing of music, dancing, etc. And in 2023, many of the objections which you're going to hear from today and read about were made, and the application was granted for the premises license. So for the best part of 3 years, the business has been regulated. People, if they so wanted to, have the ability to go to the local authority, to go to the police and make complaints. I think the crux of this application today is until this application is made, there have been no formal complaints to either the police or the council about any antisocial behaviour, nuisance, issues with the roads, criminality, etc., etc. It's only arisen through the evidence that happened in response to this application. The police are here today. They said they're willing to answer questions without formally sort of participating, subject to my clients agreeing to their conditions, which they 100% do. The police have no objections to this application, and I think that it's fair to say that they are satisfied that Mr. Bright is somebody that you can trust to ensure that the premises is managed in accordance with rules and with regulatory requirements, and that he is somebody that the council can trust with the responsibility of such a licence. And I'll be asking you today to focus on what evidentially could be proven against the emotional objections that you'll be hearing that are unsubstantiated. But I don't believe any of it is substantiated apart from emotional accounts. I stress that my clients do agree 100% with all the conditions that the police have recommended. There was a consultation process. You'll see in detail that the police recommend a number of conditions over and above the standard conditions or as variations. My client 100% accepts that, and I think although you are the adjudicators here, the police are a trusted, responsible authority who are the gold standard in terms of looking at premises in terms of certainly crime and antisocial behaviour. Again, emphasis on the fact that for 3 years there have been 0 police call-outs, 0 noise abatement notices, 0 recordings of breaches of licence conditions, whilst the business has been regulated under an alcohol licence. The reason that we are here today looking at an SEV licence is because the business has sort of operated in a grey area. You may well have Googled it and you will see there's lots of debate as to whether a club like this does actually need an SEV licence. I'm not here today to enter into that argument. My client has decided it's going to err on the side of caution and apply for a licence to make sure that there isn't any suggestion that any lines have been crossed, that it is being regulated. So I think that's to my client's benefit. As has been explained in the report, paragraph 2.1.2, usually what happens with these sorts of venues is that the patrons pay a fee to go in and will see professional performers or dancers, as it were, performing. Here we've got individuals attending. They do pay to enter the venue. That's the important thing. So it's elements of financial gain, and primarily they're paying to meet people, but the nature of the arrangement is that people do sometimes engage in activities, the customers themselves, whereby there could be this grey area cost where people are performing, as it were, and the audience only has to be one, and they could be watching or participating, and therefore a licence is possibly required. There are in the statute some exceptions to say that these activities, I think, can happen up to 11 times a year without a licence. Again, it's debatable whether this happens 11 times or less in a year, but to err on the side of caution, my client has said, okay, let's have a licence. So if we are on the wrong side of the line, this is all going to be properly regulated, which is the benefit of everybody, because we've got the police and the local authority having these extra rights to watch over what is happening. So we have a situation here where the SEV is unusual. Swingers Club is the label that's been given to this premises. The way it works, as I understand, is that there is a private website where people can ask to be invited. There is a vetting process as such undertaken by Mr. and Mrs. Wright, and then if people are allowed to come along, they pay a fee. There's no access on the night, there's no hen nights or stag night. People just turn up on the spot, and they pay a fee, as I say, to enter, which is where the financial gain, and everything is undertaken by consenting. And the alcohol licences have a strict no under 21s policy in place, the challenge 25 policy in place, condition attached to the licence for some time. And if you look at the photographs and you hear from what the police and the council, you would not know what was going on in this venue unless you were inside it. You cannot see into the venue, and as you will see, the swimming pool is completely secluded. The allegation that a child has seen a pornographic film in the swimming pool area is completely unfounded, completely unsubstantiated. It's never been reported to anybody, and I haven't personally visited the venue, but looking at the photographic evidence, hearing what I've heard, it would seem extremely unlikely or impossible for members of the public passing by to realise that this is a sexual entertainment venue. The whole purpose of the club is to behave discreetly. This isn't supposed to be some sort of public activity. This is all very discreet, and effectively the activity around the premises in terms of vehicles coming and going is certainly no more than a public a pub or even a small hotel. It's almost a residential premises, and there's more than adequate parking at the premises. I think there's parking for 50 vehicles. And what tends to happen is that the patrons turn up in groups and couples as opposed to lots and lots of vehicles. You don't get the mass entry or the mass exodus that we often get with public houses. And for the last 3 years, there have been no formal complaints relating to the fact that there is additional traffic, supposedly, about the fact that there's narrow roads, about the fact that this is a rural location. It's important today that you do consider the objections very carefully to see whether there is any factual or evidential substance of these, as opposed to a noted sort of a noted accounts from the residents. I think it's important that I address at this stage page 192 and 193 of the bundle. This is a letter from Councillor Ralph Pride that was apparently distributed to residents dated the 5th of December. And I encourage you to read them for when you get the opportunity to do so. But the elements I'm going to highlight for you at this stage. The elements that I want to highlight at this stage is the bottom paragraph of the first page. He writes to all the residents, the existing sex business of wedding causes considerable nuisance to residents, very noisy uses of the outside swimming pool, intrusive flashing lights, large volumes of vehicles on Church End and Frampton Road from the Curtin direction, Streetway and Witherton Road from the Boston direction, and cannabis consumption from 9 p.m. until the very early hours. If granted, this application will result in increasing nuisance and give a very poor reputation to the village. There are also worries that the business devalues neighbouring houses and may make them unsaleable. It then goes on to say in the following paragraph, without being graphic, the business has a local reputation for providing and charging for certain sexual activities are then listed. It then says, I understand there have been official complaints or breaches of existing conditions for the licensing officer. The allegation that there have been official complaints of breaches of existing conditions for the licensed officer, I believe, is factually untrue. The allegation of charging for sexual activities, we have asked Councillor Pride to provide his evidence for that, and he has not thus far. And I would say to you at the moment, there is no evidence or facts to support that. If there was, this is a matter that should have been brought to Precinct Council's attention and doesn't appear to have been. And then there's the allegation of illegal drug consumption. Again, there's no evidence or facts to support that, no complaints. But my concern is that Councillor Pride is obviously, as a sort of holding a public office, as somebody that's going to be very influential to members of the public. And I suspect a lot of these residents have read that correspondence and rightly will give it a lot of credence, as is the councillor like themselves. So you will note that many of the written objections literally copy and paste much of what Councillor Pride says today. And many of the objections that my client are having to face is based upon unsubstantiated allegations, and some of them are just completely downright untrue and not a matter of opinion, like, for example, saying you feel that there's a nuisance with the road usage, etc. And I do think it is very important you take that into account. And I do suggest that many of the objections that you've read about and may hear from are actually vexatious, because they are very severe allegations of criminal activity which are completely unsupported by evidence, and the police have got no concerns in that regard. What I'd like to do is just allow Mr. Wright briefly to speak to you further, to explain, if he could, why the application is being made, and just to explain briefly the recent history in terms of management of premises with being a regulated premises under the Licensing Act 2003.
Thank you. Does that mean that we should call any witnesses now? Yes, so please take a seat at the public speaking table and turn the microphone. So, yeah.
I think it's on.
It's already on, the red light's on. The red light.
Hello, it's Mr. Neil Wright and my wife Michelle Wright. We've been running the bullshit swimming parties basically for the last 14 years. Both at the beginning was private, Then we applied for alcohol, because people had run out of alcohol and they wanted alcohol, and was going to provide for it, so that's the reason we went to license the premises. And applied for an alcohol license, which we did, and there was a few objections, but it was granted. And since then, we've run the business. There's no complaints, no noise complaints. There's no outside signage, nobody would even know we were even there. Half the people who's objected here wouldn't even know we was even there. Right? It's been run without any, it's not young kids who are going there, it's professional adults who are going there. We're not boy racers, we don't race them down the road. The road is not fit to race now. We sat them between a 400-yard stretch, either end there is a sharp 90-degree bend. So anybody coming around that bend, if they're speeding, they're not coming to us. They've just gone straight past. We're proximity of about 4 houses, 2 to my right, 1 to my left, and then to the right, 200 or 300 yards further down the road. Otherwise, we're totally surrounded by agricultural fields. We have a waste management contract in place, so there's no litter. It's spotlessly clean. We have noise monitoring equipment in place. We have drugs policies, safeguarding policies, plenty of off-road parking. The whole premise is totally fenced in, gated in. CCTV runs 24 hours a day, and nobody would even know you existed. You could pass it, you wouldn't even know it was there. So, and it's been running fine for the last 15 years. So, and I said we think we need to apply for an SEV. We're a bit of a grey area whether we need it or not. So this is why we're here today, to apply for that extra license.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Do any interested parties who have made a presentation wish to ask any questions? Councillor Ashton?
May I ask Mr. Wright, how many people are coming to these events?
In the early years, probably say 10 years ago, there was probably 70, 80 people come. But basically now we don't actually open on Wednesday and Thursday yet. We've only been opening on a Friday and Saturday. And we get probably 20 vehicles, probably 35 people on a Friday, and up to 60 people on a Saturday.
And what is the maximum number of people that
The five people.
dedicated license for?
I don't know whether with the
Just, if you just put let councillor Austin to finish his question, thank you.
How many people are is the building licensed for? Any building that has a venue, you have a maximum number. And
If you don't mind, Mr. Wright, Anna will answer the question.
Under the old public entertainment licensing regime, occupancy figures were put onto the licensed premises. That had away when licensing came in. And this one, I believe, is self-specify the occupant and would be ratified by the British Fire and Rescue. So there's nothing on the license to say how many people they've been talking about.
my next question is, how many cars can be comfortably accommodated within the curtilage of the property?
60 vehicles.
Not counting what can be parked on the road.
60 vehicles.
Councillor Austin, how you like this?
Yeah, over half an acre of off-road parking.
Councillor Watson, happy with that?
Now, presumably, when this business took a license, it is a saleable asset. That is, can I ask the question, would it be possible to sell this business as an asset with a license, which wouldn't be possible before?
I mean, I can answer, but it would in theory be possible to sell it with a license, but even though transfers can be done through delegated powers, I don't think I would want to make that decision, and I would prefer it to committee. Because it would be made, so you would then get the opportunity upon any transfer to make a decision on whether you wanted to transfer or not. I understand what you're saying is that whilst it's quite low key at the moment, you would want it to change hands and to become a very commercial venture. So I would look at committee to make a decision on the transfer application.
Yeah.
Should I perhaps make that comment here from a legal perspective? The license is in the name of Mr. Wright, so that's the application. So if there was a purported business transfer, the buyer of the business would need to get to transfer the S&B into their name, which then would kickstart a review into whether that person's appropriate licensee, etc. The whole thing being reviewed again. That's the point that you're perhaps thinking of.
But the point I'm making, Madam Chairman, is that possibly we're considering a game change for businesses, changing into something that could become very much bigger. Having got a license, it is practical for
So what may happen with the business, what they may choose to transfer the business, etc. in the future, isn't really a determination for today. And Mr. Shackleton have advised that should there be a transfer, which would need to happen, then it will come back to committee. So I don't really consider that a thing for you to determine today what may happen in the future, because a lot of things will happen. Thank you.
I'm saying I've got a number of other questions.
Yeah.
I think I'll look at you.
No, that's not true.
Can we talk about the building for a minute? Now, if we turn to page 72 of our photograph, see that. You will see that we've got a photograph to a gate showing clearly a farm building. There's on the top, there's another farm building only just vaguely see the roof of as well. So it's a complex set of farm buildings that be the basis of this business. And then there's like what appears to be like a new red building. Now, I found it very difficult to understand how the premises fitted into this building, and I found the plans, the sketch plan very inadequate. I can't understand why we're not right in front of us. And I took a drawing of the site showing the area of the building that is being used by the code. So the question is why we got accurate drawings to show what we're asking a license for. We're asking for a license for the building, presumably, but we're not.
So if you look at pages 66 and 67, the internal licensable area that they're applying for. And furthermore, page 71, showing the entirety of the site with the actual license bit, the whole of the building here, and this is the bit that is covered by the premises license and what the applicant is applying for to be covered by the SEV license. So that cross-hatched pin, and then the applicant has provided their own internal plans at pages 66 and 67.
I'm disappointed we haven't got after plans to, because we're not, so the license we're talking about just is for the areas shown on.
Yeah, which sits in this bit here,
Right.
and that is the greater warehouse building and license areas for the private bit. So we use the plans that the applicant provides with their application.
Now, in view of that, one of my concerns is concerning the fire safety. In view of what happened in Switzerland recently, there have been instances, quite a number of instances actually, over the years, of active buildings being, getting on fire in the same sort of manner. They don't receive too much publicity because it's only a machine with its effective and not useful, but insulation, whether the house it needs. I just wonder what why we have got a fire safety, why have we got a fire safety for the premises?
You want to come back on that?
Yeah, thank you for the query, councillor. The premises does have a fire safety certificate and is inspected every year in accordance with fire safety regulations. So it's got as good a badge as the premises possibly realistically have in circumstances to show that it is safe.
So sure, the whole building is surrounded by a 60-minute firewall, all interior walls, all heat, smoke, detectors, fire extinguishers, alarms, regularly tested by the Ministry of Fire Safety, the old fire safety certificate, fire exits, emergency lighting, everything's all in place inside the building to comply with all fire safety.
That's why this information and documentation is something.
Yeah, certainly it shouldn't form part of the deliberations because it's something that's regulated by the fire and rescue authority, not the local authority. If they was to just reassure you, if Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue were to find issues, they would certainly improvement notice. If that wasn't quite valid, they could then review the premises licence as a responsible authority.
Okay, we'll have to move on now if you don't want to, yeah?
Can I ask one more question?
That's all.
Yeah. Assembly, the swimming pool has a lot of big roles using the swimming pool. One would expect there to be some form of regulation in place to ensure its safety and its water quality as it should be. Is that something that we should be concerned with at this area?
They might be short life, that's why I'm putting machines in.
Thank you, Councillor Neville.
Thank you. This council was asking for this question, numbers of people attending. Now, can I ask Mr. Wright, please, what's the time of rate might interest when people read this saying about present? How are people reading?
Well, we close at 2 o'clock, but the staff will come 11 onwards.
Right, and you mentioned that you have a vetting process and people have to be members, is that correct?
It's not a members club, but it's done from an adult website, so they inform us or contact us, then we give them the details and ask them for ID, make sure they're over 21. It's not in the public domain, so everybody, it's
Right, and can you confirm you have no professional performers?
no professional form. Only the customers who are, if they're the performance, they're perceived to be.
That's all, thank you, sir.
Councillor Hazard?
Thank you, Chair. The solicitor mentioned when he was giving us the overview of the betting system. Can you explain that betting system?
Well, on the website, they see us listed on their site as a blog. And they say, oh, we'd like to come and join you for the evening. Then they send us photos and proof of ID when you come. We have to see their IDs because they're over 21. And we pay a fee. It's not to general public involved in, so we'll have their name, details, or ID in that book. And they come in, and we live at our many come.
So the new customer can just arrive on the night, and the new customer must contact you beforehand, and then checks are made on the night that is the person who contacted you in the first place. And just on the CCTV, who has access to the imagery on CCTV?
Only me or police want access to it. That's it. It's
Just yourself.
It's only it's locked away. It's not for general view.
Okay.
Councillor Nichols?
Yes, because you're a licensed premises, do you have a designated premises supervisor?
I am it.
You're yeah. And, just a bit concerned, we are furnished with, a sort of plan. We've got no interior photographs and such, so it's very hard to visualise what the place is like. And I can probably see when my colleague Councillor Austin was aiming at. However, and the swimming pool, accidents can happen with people swimming, especially if alcohol's involved. Is there anybody on the premises who is a lifeguard?
We do have a lifeguard in place, and the door lock, same equipment with a ring.
Yeah. And do you have a defibrillator?
We don't have a defibrillator. I think there's one that the bed, but we don't have a defibrillator.
Is that something you might look into having?
Possibility.
To be fair, they don't really go in the deep end. They're just kind of around in the shallow end talking.
Yeah, it's not like
they go swimming, they're just done talking.
good ground in 3 inches.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're not kids. You know.
And the age group of people, are they, obviously they're over 18, but they're more mature adults?
Nobody under 21. But the example is 40 plus. Biggest majority 40 to.
Yeah, it's both. Thank you.
Councillor Oxford?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I read through on page 5, it mentions that they have the character or the condition of the premises in respect to which the application is made. So looking at the pictures on page 72 and 73, what I was concerned about is, say for example, a family were walking past these gates, or it shows you from across the field. Presumably there are people who have their clothes on, in the outdoor swimming pool. So you know where the gates are. It's not as if anybody would walk past here at the front and there is some people with no clothes on. It's all self-contained, is it, in the barn?
Yeah, you can see the first, the old barn through the gates.
Yeah.
The actual licence bit is not all that barn, it's just the back half of that barn.
Okay.
The front
So
half
that would be the car park where people get.
Oh, but what you see now is mirroring this 200 yards away. So all that goes all the way around and out another gate exactly the same.
So there's no way presumably public walking, but they wouldn't see anybody there.
There's no windows.
And the same, it shows you from across the fields. Yeah, there's a hedge.
Yeah.
What I'm after really is, your confirmation that it's all sealed at any point. It's not as if anybody working in the fields or walking past
Yeah.
would see, anything as we go on.
There's a 6-foot fence that goes around the perimeter as well as 8-10 foot conifers that are on the inside as well. And then you can see it.
That's good, but anyway, the layout, the character, or the condition of the premises, from what you say, well, it's quite reasonable because it will self-contained and
Possible for anybody to see anything.
yeah,
They would have to physically come in to see anything.
or have a drone.
No, well, you can see people at the swimming pool with the drone. But if you know the licensing rules on drones, you
Yeah,
can't allowed either.
okay, thank you for that.
Councillor Weir?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. There's also successful participants, and I suppose if the list is granted, when it becomes even more successful. Successful businesses, they are successful, seek to relocate to a larger premises, perhaps an area which is perhaps better served by highways and so on. Have there been any considerations on those lines?
To expand to a bigger premises, you mean?
Well, yes, obviously, it's successful.
No plan to do that.
Then the case of council, if they were to move,
Yeah.
they would need to make a fresh application in respect of that premises. And of course, there's also the policy here to have no more than one premises in the borough that has got the licence. So any expansion is going to be something that you're going to be able to regulate and review and make a decision on. It wouldn't happen automatically.
I mean, directly, of course, as you are there, of course, the Borough Council disappear short. So then the regulations will change. As you probably right, then the organisation needs its basics for them. So who knows? Another question, that's it. Yes. You've got 60 spaces for cars in the apartments, quite a large number. So you could perceive it being quite a significant increase in business if your application is successful.
As I sort of explained the history of it, I think there was about a time when there used to be about 80 people, but now I think the figures were 35 on Friday and 60 on Saturday. Mr. Wright will comment, but I don't think regulating the business is necessarily going to mean it's going to increase. It's just making sure that what's in operation now is something that's going to be regulated and can't be said to be in breach of the law. So there aren't plans to expand, to like to expand, it's just making sure now that effectively this can be brought into the open as we're regulated and that nobody can turn around and say you haven't got a licence and you should have it.
Thank you for the explanation. I think that's very, very good. There are a large number of objections to this. A large number of objections. People also very, very concerned. How can you allay the fears of the people who have raised these objections? You know, because I've never had myself a license in I've never seen something.
There are a large number of objections, but I'm going to ask you to look at all those objections in a very objective way. And as I said in my opening address, there is a lot of emotion. There's a lot of people, for example, saying effectively, I don't want to swing this club in my village, type of the village, it reduces the value of my property. You're not making a decision today based on moral grounds. You're making a decision today on objective grounds. And you've seen that the statutory grounds. And I would say to you that allegations of reputation is more a moral thing, and that a lot of the other objections are based on emotion and not facts or evidence. As I keep stressing, any allegations of criminality, I mean, there's quite some severe allegations of people trafficking and the such like in these objections. They are without substance, they are emotive. And the police are here today, and I can assure you that if there's any suggestion of this sort of conduct, they would be on to this local authority also. When we made the premises licence application 3 years ago, there were a number of objections then. don't think there's quite as many as there were today in terms of written objects, but there are a vast number, and they were all told, many of them came, although they didn't necessarily give live evidence, they were all told, if you've got any problems, come to the local authority, come to the police, report this to us, and none of them did until this application is made, and all of a sudden, there's problems. For 3 years, this premises has been going on with a regulated premises license, and no issues have arisen with any of the responsible authorities, environmental health, highways. Nobody's been told about any issue, and there's no empirical evidence to show about increased traffic flow or anything like that. So I ask you to just look at these objections and to look at them objectively and say what evidence is there here to support this objection, and to look at what evidence is there to undermine those objections. There's going to be a lot of subjectiveness as well, but I ask you to focus on the statutory grounds. And as we pointed out, the character of the locality is something that's very discretionary. What I would say to you is, although we're in a rural, quasi-rural area, this is a very discreet enterprise. You cannot see what's going on. You would not know what was going on. There are no, as I'm aware, churches nearby. There's no schools. There's no public places where there's fear of risk of safeguard issues with children, etc., etc. It's all very discreet. It's all very enclosed, and I think those are the factors that you should be giving serious weight to. Although obviously I do understand why these people would object in their locality. I think it's also going to be important today that you appreciate that Mr. Bryant is somebody who's under intense scrutiny as a licence holder already, and the police clearly believe he's somebody that they can trust because they are content to allow this to go ahead subject to their conditions, which Mr. Wright has 100% endorsed and adopted. So rather than numbers, look at the actual credence of each objection, I think would be the conclusion.
Madam Chairman, back down? Or do you want to stop?
Yeah, not too long, please.
Okay, well, obviously we have this objectively.
I'll say it as well. I just would like to remind you that our microphone system is quite sensitive, so don't be too close.
All right. Have you told you that both sides are not good? Is that better? That better, I look like.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have to be objective in everything. We look at all the evidence. People write to us and they tell us how they feel, and we have to take that into account. And we have to assume that it's genuine. Because I don't know these people, I don't live in this area. I have no connection with this story. I live in Boston West. I don't do that. So I don't know anybody there. I have to take all the information supplied, all the information you supply, and all the information that these residents supply. I make a judgment based on that. And be objective about it. I can put it that way. Do you understand?
That's exactly right, and it's a matter of you're the adjudicator here, Councillor, not me. But my point is, we have got hard evidence to show that this entity has been run in a perfectly lawful way. We're not causing nuisance disturbances. This is an entity which the police are satisfied has been run properly. There are a number of allegations that have been made that are clearly untrue. There may be other allegations that are more subjective. There's some allegations about there being complaints to the council which are plainly untrue, and you're going to have to exercise your judgment as to whether, when you hear from these objectors, what you feel is genuine, what you feel is a motive. We're saying here a lot of this is a motive rather than backed by empirical evidence, and as I say, nobody complained until the application was made, and I think that speaks volume. That's the point that I would make.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Staples?
I think you can be reassured we're all very fair-minded councillors, and we have to obviously listen to Mr. Wright and his side. We also have to have a duty to listen to what the people at large say as well. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing our job as councillors properly. But we're not judgmental. One point I just wanted to clarify is from Mr. Wright, is your safeguarding policy. How robust is that? I would have liked to have had sight of that today.
The council asked for a copy of the policy,
Yeah,
and so did the police.
thank you.
So it is.
It's available.
It is.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Waldman?
Chairman, just want to make something clear. All the activities listed in the application already are undertaken, but under the radar. And what you would like to do is actually make it above the radar.
We're in a bit of a grey area. We're
Yeah,
going.
you're in the grey.
So we'd sooner have the licence.
Yeah.
And
So
be right.
you can do it
That's the
openly.
only reason we did the
There's
alcohol,
no-
the premises, just to be right.
Yeah.
We could have stayed just a total private party and it would have had nothing to do with it. And not regulated at all, but we tried to do it right, proper.
So that dancing group, food shows.
We've never had one, not one yet.
No.
It's not taken place yet,
No, it's not.
so the customer could dance around the pole, that would determine the pole dance on it. And somebody watches it, so then it probably comes under an SUV license.
Yeah. But that's something that is taking place.
Yeah.
The moment is going to take place on a Friday and Saturday night. But it is going to be open on a Wednesday night and it's the same kind of activity.
No plans at the moment. No plans at the moment, but we have got a license for this.
So in the future, it will be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday and Saturday and bank holidays.
Yeah.
So it will increase the amount of people coming to your venue will increase in the
If we
future.
have an open.
So what's actually been told to us today is not true because of the very fact that you asked for extra days for this then.
That's the days of the alcohol premises license.
Yeah. But then you will now have all these activities taking place on extra days.
We don't plan to use those days. To use at the minutes of drinking establishment. There could be a pub on a Wednesday. No SPB, no.
Is it a problem now?
No,
It's always
we only open on a Friday and Saturday.
right.
Can I just make a comment about this point, please, councillor, the Wednesdays and the Thursdays? A similar point was made when we applied for the alcohol licence. Sometimes it's easy with a licence to go a bit wider with the remit of it. I think there was some sort of possibility of having limited the odd event happening on a Wednesday and Thursday. I don't believe there's any intention to have regular events on Wednesday and Thursday. But of course, if you have a one-off event and you haven't got a licence, then you haven't got a licence. So although the licence says Wednesdays and Thursdays, I don't believe that there's any intention to have regular events. It's really still the ongoing activities, which is Fridays and Saturdays, which you've heard. This isn't an extension or an expansion. This is just regulating the current activity. Going back to your point about table dancing, lap dancing, pole dancing, etc., etc. This is where the grey area comes in, because these aren't the activities that are actually happening where professional dancers get. Or these are impromptu activities. Sometimes there might only be 2 or 3 people involved, and there isn't a box on the application form that covers this exact sort of activity. So it's a little bit awkward to sort of categorise this, and that's why they've ticked those boxes. There aren't plans to have pole dancing, lap dancing, striptease. The business is going to carry on as it currently does, which I would best describe as impromptu sort of interaction between, adults who are consenting, as opposed to anything, with people going to watch a show or that sort of thing.
I do understand that. But the thing is, at the moment, it's under the radar. Obviously, if it becomes licensed, then it's out in the open. So naturally, you can attract more people to come, and you've got more days. That's all my point. And also, can I just ask the question about the adult website? You were affiliated to several adult websites.
Three websites.
So you could increase that once you were licensed if you wanted to.
Well, I could advertise on any adult
Yeah.
website if I want.
But now that if you were above the radar.
We've already advertised on those websites already.
And then just the last point, it's just about coercion thing, then safeguarding. Do you have security as a
If
regular?
if we get more than 50 people in there, we have a SIE security on premises.
And the people that are trained in safeguarding, coercion and that kind of thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Osmond?
Thank you. I would just like to clarify. I get the impression that suggestion that the customers are being just encouraged to go to the venue by streetway rather than through the village of Brampton. Being at the moment, the most straightforward way to get to the venue is the 2.5 mile rather circuitous narrow road with the odd passing place. But I gather because of the objection of residents along that road, there's am I right in thinking that Mr. Wright is trying to get them to use an alternative road through Lucy Street?
As I said previously, there is no way under the licensing regime to restrict traffic flow. It didn't form part.
Right.
We wouldn't be able to condition it so that people access or leave the premises by any particular route, I'm afraid.
I mean, if you follow your sat down, you go through Brompton Village and by the church, there's the no other way that sat down normally would take it.
So we are not allowed to talk. Is there any more questions from you? Yes, what?
More questions, Richard? Is there any more questions?
No.
Does the senior licensing officer have any questions to the applicant, please hold them.
I don't have any questions, thank you, Chair.
If you will now move on. Under the hearing procedure outlined earlier, responsible authorities are able to address the committee which police have provided the response to the application which is contained at Appendix 7. In the agenda pack, it is not the intention to address the committee. However, if members of the committee wish to ask any question, they may do so now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Looking at Appendix 7, this report is very comprehensive. I was pleased as well to read it being agreed with the applicant. Obviously, in Lincolnshire, we don't get many of things. Which I read through, I thought, is there some sort of experience or it's very thorough? Can I just understand what recommendations were they based on experience? I can only remember one place in Boston where there's a paint piper license like this. So my main question was it based on other police forces experience or on what knowledge went? Thank you.
You can to the table and use the microphone, please. Thank you. And first introduce yourself on these in Congo, so I read that before. I did consult other authorities that have sexual entertainment venue licenses or lessons learned on issues they have with this. And when I heard from Lincoln City, was some recommendations very similar. Because there are issues they've had issues with enforcement and one condition of very different depending on license. So that was one recommendation from there. But often, obviously, sexual entertainment venues are quite limited. There are other swimming establishments in the county that don't have to pay any licenses. It's a grey area that we discussed. That's why that report was written, especially with the about conditions being different, it's like, and under 21 and under 18 are two different licenses that are in play at the same time.
Thank you.
Anyone else? We'll now move on. Interest parties who have made a representation and who have registered to speak are able to address the committee in chair to present the and for any witness in support of their case. Joanna Klatsky. I would like to invite Joanna Klatsky to address committee. Please take a seat at the public speaking table and turn the microphone on.
Good afternoon. Thank you for listening to my representation. Okay, that was very interesting to listen to. My name is Joanna Gladsky, otherwise known as Karen. I've been sorted on Facebook by Mrs. Wright a few weeks ago, so today I would like to live up to that reputation as a gracefully avoided places. I've been living next door with one to Mrs. Wright the last 5 years, when I live in Hackney. I stated in my objection, since they were granted an alcohol and entertainment licence, it has been unbearable with all the noise outside in the pool area, screaming, shouting, swearing, light pollution from disco lights were shining into my bedroom window until 2 a.m. I couldn't even have my bedroom windows open during the summer months as the noise from the pool area was so loud. More recently, over the last 3 months, this will be dropped before they put the application in. The music inside is being turned up so loud, all I can hear is the bass booming and feeling the vibration in my bedroom. I have forwarded some video footage recently from October and November of this to the licensing department. It is Mrs. Wright's responsibility as licence holders to conduct regular assessments for noise coming from the premises on every occasion the premises are used for regulated entertainment. I shall ensure that noise outbreak cannot be heard at the boundary of the premises as stated in their licence powers originally granted. But quite clearly, they are not adhering to the licence. Why do you think this is going to fail if they are going to be SEB licence? I'd like to refer you to the Boston Borough Council paragraph 10, and it says any external areas used for any purpose of the landscape shall cease to be 1200 hours midnight. This is not the case presently. It does happen 3 or 4 times a week. Normally, it has actually reduced to a Friday and Saturday at the moment. Since obviously Mr. Wright have put their application into Circular Entertainment Vendor Licence, it has all gone very quiet. No lights on in the pool area during the week, except for Friday and Saturday night when they hold a party, and no loud music from inside. Usually there are party goers in the pool area 3 or 4 times a week all through the year. This is typical behaviour on Mr. Wright. They like to play themselves with good standing system and good considerate neighbours, which of course is not the case. This behaviour is typical of Mrs. Wright when they're trying to get what they want, just like they did when they're applying for the alcohol and entertainment licence. They bought all their immediate neighbours bottles of alcohol for Christmas, which they've never done before, which might be this right, but just to soften the way when we found out about the application. I have not complained for 3 years, and yes, you did have a point there, since they were granted the alcohol and entertainment licence, as my personal life dramatically changed. I took over my mum's care, it was 24/7, and over the last 3 years, I've had very, very serious ill that I've nearly lost twice in the last 18 months. So my family was my priority, and I really couldn't deal with reporting them. And it's my fault, and I only have myself to blame. With hindsight, I wish I had. So, granting an SEB licence, from my point of view, will only exacerbate issues. Myself, other immediate neighbours, and the immediate neighbours are 4 properties, and then you've got another 3 properties that are relatively close, and you know, it will exacerbate issues. Myself and other immediate neighbours and the residents of the village of Hampton and residents in nearby Wilton are already experiencing. I do believe this type of licence will attract the clientele. And I do believe it will increase the noise in the outside pool area, scream, shout and swear, and increase traffic and noise from vehicles driving and using the premises. It is already bad enough now with them speeding down the road, and when they leave the premises, they need to hide in the areas to rev their cars and leave the premises at speed, screeching out of the gates. Our road is a single track road, and the extra volume not suitable for this type of the road, causing a nuisance to residents to avoid speed and a risk of accidents. I woke up a few months ago to a vehicle outside my house, which had left the premises at speed and ended half in the fields and half in the grass verge. Before I could take a photo, Mr. Wright had got his book and towed it back onto his premises. Half an hour later, the vehicle left the premises, quite clearly the driver saving lights, he or she was on the vehicle alcohol. Mr. and Mrs. Wright should have never let their driver leave the premises. It's their responsibility to safeguard their customers and general public. Then a couple of months ago, a vehicle went off the road around the corner from my house and veered into my neighbour's hedge, taking out a large portion of the hedge. So you can understand our concerns with the increase of clientele, the increase of traffic, the increase of speed. It is Mr. and Mrs. Wright's responsibility as licensed to ensure incidents like this do not happen and any nuisance like they're not doing this. So again, I ask, why do you think this is going to change the SCB license? I'd like to also refer to Appendix 1 of the Safety section, page 45, paragraph 37. The licensee shall take all reasonable precautions for the safety of the public and employees. There's also the issue of parking, which obviously we can talk about. When we attend the hearing for the alcohol entertainment license, Mr. Wright stated there's in the parking. There is some, there's quite often cars visiting the parking. Again, yes, we haven't got the evidence. My fault. At the time, I was dealing with too many things to be dealing with this. So there's quite often cars visiting the property overflow onto the grass verge. One of the neighbours stated in their objection, he finds it very difficult to get onto his own driveway with traffic, and that is one of the immediate neighbours. And also, whilst walking my dogs, I come across plastic glasses which have been discarded onto the grass from those people that are parking in the grass verge. So, with this in mind, with an SCB licence, there is going to be people visiting. So again, where are all the extra vehicles going to be parking? Very intent. So, also, the concern is affecting the local environment, increased vehicle emissions, potential harm to the wildlife, and increased light pollution. We also have the risk of more customers and the risk of crime and social behaviour. How is it going to be policed? Are the licensing committee going to make regular inspections and monitoring? No disrespect, but we do never see any police driving down Hampton Road, or are you just going to rely on residents to manage the consequences? The location of the sex venue is totally inappropriate for this residential area and Hampton Village as a whole. As a licensing authority, it is your duty to the residents. And I ask all of you, would you like to live next door to such an establishment? And this is just not on, and I know it's not on the morality of it, but when you live there, it's totally a different kettle of fish, and experience it, it really is unbearable. So as a lot of the directors have stated, this sort of establishment should be situated either on an industrial estate and no near neighbours or in the I had no idea that I had moved next door to a swimming pool 5 years ago. A local search was done and nothing came up because there was no application submitted then. I worked in conveyancing for 10 years for a local solicitors and dealt with licensing applications during the conveyancing process and what issues can arise from it. With his licenses granted, there is no way for myself or any neighbours will be able to sell their house. Once this is put on local search, there is no chance that potential buyer move forward with the purchase. There are several elderly neighbours next to these premises who have lived here for more than 30 years, and I am sure they are affected by the noise pollution and the swimming premises, and I thought that they live next to a swimming venue, but now potentially next door unless the view is just not acceptable. It must be all them to think that they're staying in life, I live next door to such an establishment. So I'll think on that for everyone. And Mr. Wright just quite clearly have noticed that when you like this in close proximity to them. This is not the environment any license establishment. We live in a beautiful area of London and we have the right to be able to enjoy living here and enjoy the environment and not come to party go screaming, shouting and swearing and listening to music inside the property and dealing with speed and vehicles on premises. Mr. and Mrs. Wright have a sustained history of non-compliance and are loyal to themselves. When challenged, i.e. complaints made that and they have a reputation of intimidating their neighbours to be arguable. And that's why some of them have not come forward with objections for fear of reprisals. They've erected a very large building outside without prior approval, constructed a living accommodation with a wet warehouse without prior approval, sold alcohol, a licence and shown for a retail without a licence. I'd like to refer you to your policy, page 44, paragraph 34, alterations or additions either to internal or external on whether permanent or temporary infrastructure, lighting or layout of the premises will not be made except with the required approval of the council. Mr. and Mrs. Wright are looking to expand their section entertainment business and increase their revenue. Their revenue, what's otherwise while they're doing it. I do not believe for 1 minute that they will adhere to the change in their application. They have and always will tell you what you want to hear for their own personal financial. With their non-compliance history, what gives you the confidence that they will adhere to this SCB licence? No police nor not that will be done on them. The other part I do find disturbing is that Mr. and Mrs. White, when challenged about section entertainment being held on the premise appearing for the alcohol and entertainment licence, they vehemently denied these accusations, even though we have evidence there as a sentence manual on the internet for years. And Mr. Wright a few weeks ago said on Facebook that there have been schools been there for 10 years and now they apply for SCB. A licence may be used to refuse the character of relevant locality density and proximity to resident accommodation, which I think is very, very important in this committee meeting. So I'd like to refer you to the council policy document, page 39. It does say that Boston Borough Council from numerous establishments posting an SCP to conflict with not getting valid environmental and real society. I believe that comes under the umbrella of the sexual establishment, and I believe we already have one in the centre of town. And it does not fit in with our local environmental oversight. Very important to consider. It does actually say also in paragraph 2.2 that there is one council authorised under the licence in Act 2003 to apply an by licence in SCB. This place is also within Boston Borough Town Centre. And then we've got paragraph 7.5 or B, the grant or renewal of the licence is given in credit regarding the character of the relevant locality or to be used for tenants in the vicinity of our port, which obviously is regarding the locality of where we live next door to it. So basically, another point on the appendix, if it's one page 4 from paragraph 4. Times of operation of a sex establishment, this is in BBC's policy document, shall only be open from 9 AM to 8 PM, Monday to Saturday, and not Sundays or bank holidays. So why are they extended out to be considered? So the 26 very strong objections that have been received from residents are being affected quite clearly highlight the serious issues that we are experiencing and the definitive risk that these issues can get worse. The club either needs to be relocated or closed down, not granted an SCB licence.
Do you wish to hold any witness? Does the applicant wish to ask any questions of the party?
Hello, Mrs. Glasgow. We meet again, don't we? Because you were here 3 years ago this very day, and you made a similar impassioned plea then, didn't you, to object to the alcohol premises licence, and made many of the same comments and observations you made there, and insisted then that these things were real, that they were happening, had happened. And you were told, weren't you, quite clearly that if you had these concerns, report them. And so, despite the fact you're going through a living hell in your words, something that's unbearable, something that is materially affecting your health, for 3 years, notwithstanding, I'm sorry to hear, certain personal problems, you just let it go.
I didn't let it go, I postponed it, because my life, my personal life, and my family took priority. Now, my mum is now in a care home. My life was consumed looking after my mum and my brother. My brother was in hospital 8 months and dying, and I was sleeping at his bedside, and then came to my mother. So that was my priority. My mum is now in a care home, and now I've got my life. And I can now start to think of myself and what's happening around me. So in October of last year, I started to make recordings, because my plan was to put my complaints in the new year. And then in November, the sign went up. So yes, I hold my hands up, I admit I didn't complain. And yes, it has affected me. But my mental health is suffering. I don't suffer with my mental health.
You've mentioned certain incidents, didn't have time to.
Well, yeah, I didn't have time, but
things. You mentioned certain incidents where you've seen that Mr. Bright has helped the driver who's gone off the road, picked up waste, etc., etc. Again, I've got the utmost sympathy for the person's circumstances, but I called the police a photograph.
I couldn't get the photograph. Literally, I woke up on a Sunday morning, saw the car outside, my phone was upstairs before, and they Mr. Black drove the truck, so I couldn't. What was the point of calling the police? Because there was no evidence there, they took it back on the premises.
You've mentioned other neighbours feel the same about the venue and what's been happening. And again, none of them have made any official complaints.
I'm not sure myself. I can't see them.
And obviously, the point I make is that we have, you mentioned a history of non-compliance. There is no history of non-compliance. Where is the record of non-compliance?
Been told.
Who have you called and when?
Well, I rang the planning department about the building.
We rang the planning department about the building.
About the building that was built without any planning application.
When was this? This was to do with the planning.
Last year.
Okay, but that's a planning issue.
Yeah, I'm just saying that history of non-compliance.
There is no history of non-compliance with the alcohol act. That's a fact.
I'm sorry, but you know, like I say, you've not even visited the premises and you actually don't know what it's like.
And I'm saying to you that where is the history of non-compliance with the alcohol licence?
There's not been told about it. I have actually known people that have actually visited the property.
But it's all very anecdotal, isn't it?
Well, it could well be, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to be naming people, am I?
They haven't complained, have they? There's no record.
Well, no, because they're just told me they're not complained, no, they don't live there. This is the thing, the clients that don't complain, don't live there, they're quite happy to put things on Facebook and say, you know, I'm Karen or I'm just a, you know, a do-gooder. It's not that at all. It is the truth. And I'll be honest with you, and I said this at the last meeting, I don't actually care what people do behind their Facebook. I really don't. It is their business. But when it affects me, I don't care a fish. And now I've got my life back. I'm now starting to get a normal life back. I've decided that I need to do something about it. And yes, I do hold my hands up. You should have done something about it and then pick yourself for not doing something about it. But I did start to take videos and record things.
We had a similar story 3 years ago. You hadn't made any complaints then.
Yeah, but it didn't have a license in place then. I made complaints to Mr. We had an argument. It was a face-to-face thing. The license wasn't in place then.
I know that you were alleging then that things were happening.
Not originally, but obviously, after the hardest have been here, I would like committee members and all that issue. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is Bertrand Visconti, so I'm not sure. You made lots of allegations, obviously, you talked about screaming and shouting, swearing, red cars, noise pollution, loud disco music, cars speeding out of the venue. But I'm interested in the evidence because you said that you took some video footage and I think you said you sent it to Environmental Health in Boston. Is that correct? As you also talked about October 25 recordings. So
Yes,
can you tell us about that evidence that you were supposed to present?
Yeah, basically it's on my mobile phone. And my bedroom overlooks the swimming pool area. And I did send it to Anna, and Anna forwarded it onto the licensed and the environmental health people. Unfortunately, with mobile phones, you can't get a good reading. You can see, you can't hear very well. So they basically offered to me that they've sent me diaries and they've said that obviously I've got to keep a note of any activities, any noise, and then they will install noise monitoring equipment for me.
Yes, and have you been keeping a diary since?
Well, as I said earlier, since they put the application in, I'm completely quiet. I've never known it like it for the last 8 weeks. I'm completely quiet, no lights on, no flashing lights in my bedroom, no noise, except for Friday, Saturday, and I know people in the area, which is very, very unusual.
This is Town Airport, excuse me, but you talked about you being finished as a Callan. What does that mean? Is that
It is like complaint constantly.
okay?
Like clearly, I haven't done in the last 3 years. And then plans I wish I had, but yeah, it just means I'm a constant complaint. I haven't done in the last 3 years.
Thank you very much.
Nicholas? No. Oh, sorry, no, my God. If you don't mind, we'll have 10 minutes break. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Yeah, the reason I asked that is because we have heard from the applicant and their representative information about professional form. We are now understand we're not. But I wanted to ask whether they could. We heard brief mention about security provision in the councils. There is mention in papers about an SII approved security person. We've only heard, I think, something for the first time, that they're only there if there are more than 50 people. I wanted clarification on that. So today about a microphone, which I don't think we've ever heard of before. Seeing any reference to the microphone. Oh. Also have a reference to a drone use. The only drone user in the area was Mr. Wright. He received complaints from a resident who thought he was spying.
Sorry, no, the comment about the drone is actually incorrect. The applicant said you would only be able to view if there was a drone, or one of the committees said. They certainly didn't say anything in terms of them having a drone and using it, that's incorrect.
Thank you. But the other points about security guard, when, lifeguard, when could professional performers be employed later while this license is valid? These are not part of my existing notes, my existing submission. This has come up this afternoon.
An answer about the SIA doorman. There is a condition on the alcohol licence where Mr. Wright actively has to risk assess as and when the doorman should be used. I think you've heard him say that his current assessment is when there's 50 people. That activity or that process, as we go on for 3 years, is part of the regulated process, and if there are any concerns from the council and the police, they could have been raised, but there's been no issue. I think, broadly speaking, the idea of the licence granted is that it will adopt the premises licence conditions just in case the premises is open as an SEV, but there's no alcohol or the regulated entertainment. So all the terms and conditions that attach to the premises licence will be carried forward into the SEV if it is granted today as applied for.
Thank you. Oh, I hope that the residents who contacted me earlier today with their concerns about security arrangements will be able to see the recording before we can pass. I hope they will be reassured as well. Thank you. But is there an answer about professional performance?
Outside of unfit and the outside professional. Yeah.
Never.
No, I mean to make that absolutely clear, the boxes on the licence application don't really fit the circumstances. My clients had to tick a box. There's no intention to have professional performance. This is a private club, save that people are paying to go in, and these impromptu activities do happen between the patrons themselves. There are no professional entertainers.
With that in mind, would that be something that you would willing to offer as a condition on the licence?
We did say that too.
It's on condition.
On the condition, yeah.
It is addressed, I'm sorry,
It is.
the microphone. It is addressed in the police's representation that it has been agreed that there will be no commercially bought in performers, and it will only be customers of the premises participating in activities.
And a lifeguard?
Not a matter for the consideration under licensing legislation, I'm afraid. It would be a health and safety. So not, it may be relevant in terms of the licensing act because of public safety licensing objective, but not under the SEV application. It's that answer.
Okay. Right, this is my submission. I've been asked by the chairman of the council to represent the council here at this hearing if there was no one else from the council to do so. Isn't so I found out today. So I will address Frampton Parish Council's concerns within my own submission to this afternoon session. Let people know what's going on. Right, the first thing that I wanted to mention is to my letter in December. I can explain to the meeting why I produced the letter. Between 30 and 40 houses nearest to a fence. As you have heard, seen from the submission, there is widespread concern the effects on locality by the application. Sorry. I contacted the licensing department very soon after I saw the license application on the fence around the premises, which was quite a bit later than the 17th of November. One of the first things I did after that was contact the parish council to see if a clerk had been informed of the application. Because we had just had a meeting on the 20th of November, and this wasn't meant one appeared to be aware of. Clerk after confirmed that they had not been informed by anyone in Boston. When I contacted the licensing department, they disputed my assertion that the notice had not been up when it was supposed to be. And as told you that a photograph was taken. The subsequent photograph was taken, I'm not sure when, but I go past the premises at least once a day. I would have noticed and noticed. I pay attention to all planning notices that pass in my way. I do pay attention to them. If there had been a notice on a ground fence, I would have noticed it, I am sure. I say I go past their premises at least once a day, so I'm and my neighbours confirmed something that they have not been until then. So whether the notice blew down and had to be replaced, I don't know. But I requested an extension of the period for consultation, which was refused. Meantime, the parish council had also requested an extension so that they could, parish council could consider this application at their next meeting. That was also refused. A surprise to the parish council because when planning applications come in late, 2 days later than the parish council meeting, sometimes the parish requests an extension so that they can submit their ideas on the application. And planning frequently grants extensions to the parish. It does so with Curtin Parish Council as well as Paddington. So it's unfortunate that licensing did not have the flexibility to allow an extension for parish council to consider that. Nevertheless, the parish council consulted each other by email, and because we were, I think very well all of us, receiving representation from residents who had seen my letter, parish council decided to have an extraordinary general meeting. And it did so just before Christmas, and it has made representation to you on page 124. I'll just two of those points later on. Now back to my letter. The reason I sent this or delivered this letter, previous letter, delivered to the households in the area, because I was aware of the existing concerns amongst residents about this business. The particular items about cannabis use, I have smoked cannabis there myself several times. I know from experience, particularly with parish councils, that complaints to at least a number, unless a police officer happens to be in the right place at the right time. Reporting smelling cannabis outside premises doesn't produce any action. We know that in procurement parishes. So that's the cannabis. I have smelled cannabis there, and other people have told me they have smelled cannabis. The other stuff about what goes on in the premises is commonly known amongst local residents. It has been repeated to me several times by different residents. Some of whom have made objections to this application. Others have not. Because as they told me, they like to keep their heads down or they feel intimidated by the whole affair and by the applicants. So my allegations of what goes on in my letter has come from local residents and my own experience. I'm sure Mr. Shacklestone will cross-examine. So that's my letter, which went out on Saturday for Christmas. Now, my submission to this process is at page 122 of your text. It did not ask to be anonymised because people know I'm a local councillor. They know I'm a borough councillor, they know I'm a church councillor. I have acted in the, or I understand, in the interest of residents of Brampton. Because residents of Brampton needed to know about this application in order to make a comment on it, yes or no. There are, I think, 3 proving messages, but there's rather more against. I don't know whether they only happened because I delivered that letter. But a lot of people in Brampton have been talking about this quite intensely for the last month or so. Not as a result of my letter, but because of what is going on. Now, between where I live on the corner of Frampton Woods and Wilton Woods, and the village of Frampton proper, the area around the church, for example, all parish councillors live in houses along that road. We have all been aware of complaints, problems, and so on with these premises over the years. And we all know that references to the piece about speeding traffic at 2 o'clock on Saturday morning go nowhere. Brampton Parish Council has only once had a visit by a police officer since I've been elected in 2023. Curtains have more visits. But they are unable to help with the everyday complaints that we receive as councillors. And I can imagine my colleagues on the Borough Council may have similar problems. And they, like me, will encourage people when they complain to me or to them, the Borough Councillor, or whatever, please. Borough Council can't do anything about this. Please complain to X. I don't know if they do or not. I'm not sending their complaints to me. If I am telling them over the borough number or contact the neighbourhood police entity about whatever. I don't know if they are doing that. Obviously, to say no complaints you can see. On the no complaints point, I'm a little surprised because I've lived in the area since 1996. And I knew the previous residents of Honeysuckle Cottage, which is next door to the street. I knew the former residents, Val and John, elderly people. He has now died, she has moved in with her family for months. They told me and other neighbours about their complaints to Boston Borough Council about the excessive noise from rights premises. They told me, and I believe other neighbours, that on more than one occasion, Environment is Health installed sound equipment in their back, I think there's a bedroom, maybe back room upstairs. I am surprised that the insertion of being no complaints about it. I could try to track down the leader to ask exactly when, but there must be a record in Boston Council of that complaint and the installation of that equipment. The result of the check. So there's that. One of the points that has been made repeatedly to me by local residents in the last week in particular, and longer than that, is that they didn't have enough information to affect or comment on information from whatever was in the newspaper, which I didn't see, or the notice on the website. People who've seen the submission to this committee, which only came out, commented to me saying, I didn't have all this information or more of this information part of the process for the council. And I regret that I've only just seen the police report, which I commend to you. I wish we had had, the residents had had more information about this application earlier. Now, as with the last application, Mr. Wright amended their terms, their hours, quite late in the day. 2023, they reduced their hours. I think on the day here, they are changing the now relatively late. Residents feel that they have been given an advantage over residents who may want to comment yet to what is going on without full information about the verity of the application. And that is why I asked for further information about security. There's nothing I can do about the process, and there's probably nothing you can do about the process. It will be for our successor council, Councillor Leader, to try and sort out what happens in the future, whether this application comes up for renewal. There's a in terms of something else, I've also been asked by residents of certain cases, one thing after another, what's next? Are we going to become a brothel? I replied to the first person who asked me that to say, well, brothels are not illegal, so that wouldn't be part of the licensing process. I have no detailed knowledge of brothels or staying bodies for sex, but there is a degree of despair of some local residents that Mr. Wright are exploiting I think they're exploiting the inexperience of Boston Borough Council trying for these things in a location which pretty well everyone agrees is not appropriate for these activities. Now, those are my main points. I would like to draw your attention to a number of points in the objections or in the pages from the item 4 onwards. This is relatively repetitive. The bylaw mentioned that people are complaining about the state of the roads being not suitable for more traffic, both the environment and the noise element. They have questions about the workforce, which there isn't going to be one, apparently, but people don't know that we're putting in points. They have mentioned the character of the area. You see this proposal as detrimental to the character of the area. They think it is inappropriate development. Some people have mentioned drugs because obviously they have heard about drug use. Some mention house values. Concern has been expressed that some of the properties that were on sale in Frampton have been on sale for longer than average. I saw by one of the residents that increase in house prices in postcode P20 is lower than the house price increase in P21, P22, and P11, which is surrounding postcode areas. That's not definitive proof that the cause of that is this case, but people are thinking that this establishment is affecting their property prices, as you've seen. There are concerns throughout the observations about the reputation of the area. People tend to like Frampton, like the rural parts of Boston, and they do not think that this development is helping either. in terms of the reputation of the area, even I have had colleagues from a neighbouring council commenting to me that they've been in the Untitled Chapter for this, saying, how do you allow this in your area? We respect our residents, we protect our villages. Now, I couldn't really answer that because that's a policy of the Boston Council. But I think it does reflect rather badly on reputation, Boston, and in particular, Anthony, if this is a mentioned safety concerns, traffic. So now the stuff from Frampton Parish Council was in page 2024. Frampton asked not to be an on-item, for why I would have on submissions. The people would be able to identify the properties in the councillor, and obviously they identify which it's us. Okay, on the Frampton objection, when Parish Council had its meeting, the biggest concern related to the meeting by councillors was the state of the roads, number of the vehicles, and the vehicles that go rather fast, further down the road than outside, as you must be right, but nevertheless, it's concerned for the village. In the early hours of the morning, people have related how they dare not take their dogs for a late night walk because of the speed of passing traffic, which they attribute to cruising night and night. I think Frampton roads, Streetway and Witherton roads are particularly prone to late night fast drivers. Because my observation doesn't happen except at weekends. Immediate connections to this. See from the Parish Council submission that they have really have actively avoided commenting on morality issues. We went out of our way to not put forward any complaints about perceptions of what's going on there or whether they should, so on. One of the concerns which they highlighted is the possibility of changing clientele. And you've obviously heard from like representatives that they have a profile of who they expect as their customers. But there are worries that bring the ordinary complaints as well, possibility of stagnates and multiple levels of perhaps younger men going there, highlighting potential alcohol and vehicle problems. The Parish Council also made a clear point about how it is difficult to get police attention to concerns in the area. I've mentioned it before, but Frampton Parish Council has persistent complaints which councillors refer the complainants onto the necessary agents. The Borough Council, please do this. If it's roads, highways, please contact the county council. If it's a roadside, please go to fix my feet and so on. We're doing that every single meeting. I'm sure my colleagues on other councils are doing the same. But there is a degree of frustration on the Frampton Parish Council. Do that because the message is not been across generally. Complaints about late traffic from 50 muffins. Can do about it, and there's not much in the Borough Council. So there's that. In terms of persistence of disregarding your which my neighbour Joe raised earlier on. I'm surprised that rights have not acknowledged the fact that they were forced by the Borough Council to apply for retrospective permission for certificate of lawful occupation. When they were living in the agricultural shed that we're talking about. This was before I became council. I think the Borough Council have refused. And I know the rights are now living again in the house of the front.
With respect, planning matters are not a consideration. They're not a valid.
Thank you very much. If you could,
That's really the end of what I want to say, because I put the council parish council together.
Councillor, Mark, does the applicant have any questions?
Yes, please. Councillor Pike, you were here 3 years ago when we had the alcohol licensing objections, weren't you?
Yes.
I've pretty much repeated that in what you've just said today.
There wasn't a recording, there wasn't a transcript of it, so I can't confirm.
But, do you remember you said that day?
I think that was 3 years ago.
Particularly the installation of the sound recording equipment. That was again exactly the same what you said 3 years ago. And again, you were here 3 years ago when we went through that if a license was granted as it was, how reports could be made to the police, to the local authority, breaches of license conditions. And you have not made any complaints, nor has anybody else, have they?
But when people have mentioned that to me, I have told them how to do that.
You wrote that letter on the 5th of December, and obviously you're perfectly entitled and perhaps have a responsibility to make those aware of concerns. And I think you'll appreciate as a councillor that people will give you a lot of gravitas and credence to what you say. You'll be factually correct.
Anyway.
And in that letter, you made a number of allegations. I turn to the one about the business has a reputation of providing and charging for certain sexual activities. And you just said that people have told you that this had happened.
It's a common belief.
It's a common belief. Did these people tell you why they had that belief, or did you ask them why they had that belief?
No.
So anybody could just say to you, I think this is a knocking shot, to use the words you put in your email, and you would put that in the letter and said, sex is being paid for.
That is an allegation made by a number of people to me, I presume to other people as well. If they've also told taxi drivers.
I'm not going to labour the point, but you've put it in a letter to say the business has a reputation for providing and charging for sexual activities. Don't you think that it would have been responsible for you not to have put that in a letter, unless you question the people who've made the allegation, saying, what's the basis for your allegation? And not just taking it at face value?
No, I think it was fair comment.
You then say, I understand there have been official complaints of breaches of existing conditions to the licensing officer. There haven't been official complaints.
We've been told.
Sorry.
We have been told today.
Is it?
I was told by other people that there have been.
Okay. Did you accept those comments at face value without questioning?
Yes.
You didn't think, before I put this in a letter, I'll just check with the council whether or not this is true?
No, because I thought it was important to let people know as soon as possible.
It's also important to make sure that it's factually correct, isn't it?
If I'm not actually correct, I apologise. But I think it was important that stand out. That was my
You were acting on the notion and impulse, weren't you? Because no very loads about the subject.
I was delivering that letter.
No problem with that.
I'll have to just, committee commissioners also, what, does any members of the content have any more questions? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I appreciate what you said, Councillor. Obviously, a lot of locals are concerned about application, but you talked about people feeling intimidated, but have you any evidence of intimidation?
So,
Could you explain further?
I could talk about personal insult. Very relevant.
You talked about this, what this law was recruitment, and so of course, when you very smart, but the fact is, what you've given us with the hearsay evidence, really, I think the committee can give that much weight to that. It's in the past, and I say it's hearsay.
Sorry.
Yes. Yeah.
Contradicting what we told by the. I'm not sure. I can distinctly remember my neighbours telling me that they had sound equipment installed in their bedroom because they didn't let them take out the noise from expenses. I believe other neighbours would say that.
The last thing you talked about disregard of the law again, but we've got some of that to do with money matter. Again, is there any evidence of this disregard of the law?
No, this is something that I made that earlier on. The disregard of the law, I was in.
Sorry, you said again.
Disregard of the law, my was the borough council discovering that this agricultural shed was being lived in. I don't know, but I assume someone informed me something like that they needed to apply for permission for this, a certificate of lawful occupation. I believe that application was turned down. So that's.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you.
You wish to call any of that? As I heard, that you mentioned your mic is down. And let's share your councillor Clark for your.
Thank you.
Now I would like to invite you. The councillor Clark, if you would support your sitting your message of the councillor, thank you. Now I would like to invite Alan Taylor.
Not all.
You know that,
Thank you very much. By way of a bit of light relief. Lord Henry VIII said to his wife, I won't keep you long. But I have some tiny points that I need to make. And the first one is regarding the police. I look at trial. I'm about to go across the bit of the continent. And there was always the police there. To hold my hand and to take me across the road. And I was always brought up thinking that the police were not a force, but were a service. And that they provided that service to people. I commend your report. But I think there are areas that we need to be aware of. Standing on its own is relevant, but it's totally irrelevant to this application. Is it said you've not received any complaint? I made a complaint to you about Mr. Wright accusing me of receiving pornographic material and calling me a pedophile. That was reported to yourself, and a crime number was given to me on that occasion. I see your report respectfully as being flawed. It seems biased towards the applicant, towards the person making a profit out of sex. I notice that there's been no stated meeting of itself with local residents.
Sorry,
So
Mr.
the
can I just stop you there, please? You need to keep to the relevance of the application. You're talking around a lot of things, and I have to say, I'm not clear as to whose report you're criticising us for, please. I'm not entirely clear, but can you please stick to your concerns about the application?
All of this is part of the application because that report is in the application. I wasn't consulted, nor with the local community, about the application itself, and I think you need to know that. The report, the notion of yourself serving the local community of Hampton is just not there. And you might, as police, reconsider your approach to that application in the light of the 26 objectives. Even if this doesn't reflect the number of the nuclear family of 3 to 4, there's a reasonable number of residents within the village, at least 52 from the objections that you've received, and their views are seemingly being ignored. And I recognise that as a body, we're overstretched. I recognise.
I'm sorry, you're saying they are not to stick to the application.
After the application, Chair, I'm sorry. This, to speak with respect, there's a criticism of policing, we've got that point.
Yes, I do.
We need to move on with the study.
Yes. Will you stick to the application, please, yeah? We understood that from officers and how we
In the papers that I've received. We don't call you out because we know that your time is busy. We don't call you out because by the time you arrive, the incident itself has just been solved in one way or another. But I do believe that the bias has been towards the applicant rather than seeing the whole community.
Mr. Payne,
My second,
sorry, my advice to the committee is going to be that respectfully, you're criticising the police have put in their application, we all understand that. If you can't take the application or you can't take your objections any further in relation to what you have mentioned, then my advice to the committee is to ask you to stop talking. You're not actually taking the application any further, but there are an awful lot of allegations to a responsible authority, which I'm afraid I'm not content you to continue with.
can I continue about the 3 supporters of the application? And they are in front of on page 149. I notice that there's no address on those orders. And it would be interesting to know how they would react if a similar application was presented in their residential area. One with it applies to everyone. Within the immediate residential area of Front, which relate to this application, there are now 6 properties for sale. There are no other properties in Brampton for sale in terms of density. 3 years ago, prior to the application, that was not the case. And the reason is that Brampton is now blighted. It prevents growth and prosperity and improvement. In other words, the value of your property, your homes, decreases, and that can seriously affect your livelihood and well-being. It's not emotional. It is not emotional, as we keep hearing. It is practical, it is down to earth, it is realistic, and you need to know that. NIMBYism needs to be recognised, because if it's not, the spiralling down of stability and of Frampton being a special and a pleasant place in which to live will suddenly, they'd have to face it. And perhaps later on, I'll suggest a way to overcome it in relation to this application. You're concerned a bit about me, and I'm concerned about myself. And I hope that what I have to say is going to be relevant. In my ministry, which started in Liverpool,
I'm sorry, Mr. Taylor, that's nothing to do with Frampton or Boston or this application.
You will see in a moment that it has.
We have limited time. If you
I'm
could
aware
make it short, please, as we still have questions. Yeah.
Good. Well,
Thank you.
There's perhaps more. I worked in Toxteth, in Leeds. I was in Hare Hills. They were both in the red light district. I can smell cannabis a mile away. It's almost gone into my DNA. And there are times when I'm returning home in the summer months, perhaps a bit late. You slow down, you pass the pool shed. Cannabis. I can't tell you the variety, but it's there. In my life in Hare Hills, it was rough. Perhaps my life in Toxteth was even rougher.
Sorry, Mr. Taylor, but no offense to you. I have my life. Everyone does. We all go through our daily routine problems, but could we stick to application? If you don't mind, I would like applicant to ask questions and then carry on.
And then for me to carry on?
No.
Well,
I would like
therefore,
applicant to ask questions if he has any.
The applicant might want to sort of ask more questions if you allow me to finish. in my time in Hare Hills with the red light district, the area of the Yorkshire Ripper, I was very much aware of sexual activity. I was not only a parish priest, I was a councillor. And during my council work, and this included Councillor Pryke as well, we both encouraged Leeds City Council to establish a dedicated area of the city where working women would be safe. The area was easily monitored by the statutory services, police and health. It was an industrial estate. It didn't have a residential
I'm
element.
sorry, but the relevancy of this, if you could
Yeah, no,
perhaps
sorry.
focus in.
We have to respect.
I'm
each other.
entitled to ask the chairman.
Can we just respect each other, yeah?
Well, I was asking the chairman.
Sorry,
Exactly. Raising my hand, sorry, but
Sorry, I do have the permission of the chair to speak at this point. Mr. Taylor, I'm afraid I'm going to have to advise the chairman to stop you talking now. There's a lot of irrelevance. We have your representation in front of you. The committee can determine in terms of that what you're talking about in terms of other areas simply isn't relevant, and I'm afraid I can't allow that to continue.
Right.
To the
But
committee.
What I do hope is that from the committee will look at the guidance from the Home Office, page 101 and 102, paragraph 328, which is about the application. I do hope they will look at that. You have a real opportunity today to make a change. We've heard already from the officers that your policy as a borough perhaps needs to be modified.
Mr. Taylor, we
strongly-
all have a duty to read our paperwork. That's why we are here. I'm really sorry. No disrespect, but I think that's more than enough. Thank you very much. Any questions from applicants? I'm sorry, we start with applicants.
Yes,
Then after members of committee.
yes.
Thank you.
sorry. Thank you.
Please, if you could be straightforward. No.
I've
don't
only got
minimally.
one
Yeah, thank
area
you.
to question about. It's about property prices and reputation. 6 properties that are for sale in Frampton at the moment, assuming that's correct. Have you spoken to the occupants as to why they're selling?
Yes,
And what have they said?
they want to get out.
And you're not willing to say who they are?
No, I'm not.
No.
Anyone?
I'm surprised, Chair. I'm surprised that the legal representative hasn't even visited the premises. I hope you know where they are. Perhaps also as a committee, you need to do a site visit. And the issues that Councillor Austin made are absolutely scary. 60 cars in a car park, 120 people wanting to escape.
Thank you, Mr. Teller. We heard already this information. We clearly did. Thank you very much. Anyone else from committee has any question? Thank you, applicant. Yeah, no more questions. You said one question. I'm sorry, we were going to stick with one. Yeah, thank you. Committee, no, thank you. Committee members, yeah. Mr. Noble?
Chair, yes, I'll be brief. I'll put this in context. Mr. Taylor, or Reverend Taylor, sorry, you said that you had been accused of being, and this is relevant, you've been in receipt of pornographic material. Was that verbal, in which case it's slander, or was it written, was it libelous? And in that context, are you asserting that Mr. Taylor is not a fit and proper person to hold a licence because of this alleged activity?
Not Mr. Taylor, Mr. Wright.
Mr. Wright, I'm sorry. Do beg your pardon. Sorry. Mr. Wright, yes. Yeah, is that your point you're trying to make there?
That's a strong point to be made.
Thank you. That's good. That's all, Tim.
Councillor Isaac?
Yes, going back to properties. So with your local knowledge, have any properties sold in the last 3 years in the Frampton area. In the area that we're considering as being part of the village, I think, is it two? I just, one or two. Okay, I just wanted clarification because obviously you was indicating that a lot of properties are now up for sale because of this establishment. But if the actual village has been able, and people put properties up for all sorts of reasons, so it's very hard to say it's just for this application. But I just wanted to know that previous buying and selling has occurred in Frampton, and that obviously never put people off buying properties to move into the area with this establishment on site. I understand this application may well raise the profile, and I take that onto account as well. Thank you.
Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Reverend Taylor, for your comments. One of the essence and main things that we've looked at as well is the police report. And during your discussion of obviously you mentioned about certain criticisms of the police and everything. I wondered then, because that could form part of a condition of this application, whether if I could ask the licensing officer and the legal advisor, would it be an opportunity to ask the police to comment and reply to those things that were mentioned? So I just thought I'd discuss that, please.
I don't know that there's any, the comments made by Mr. Taylor, in my view, and my advice to the committee were not particularly relevant in terms of what the police have said. The police have provided the report that you have. I don't believe there's any need for them to come back on that. Oh,
if they would like to come back.
What is from the licensing department of Lincolnshire Police? Sorry.
Apologies, Chairman, but we have reached 3 hours and members actually need to take a vote on whether to continue with the meeting or not.
Mr. Taylor, please come back to your seat. Thank you very much for your speech. Thank you for questions.
You've not heard my speech. Silenced.
Through you, Madam Chairman, can we take a vote on whether or not to continue?
Yes, please. Shall we vote?
Do you want me to? So, can you just have a show of hands for all those in favour of continuing with the meeting? Yeah, that's carried unanimously. Thank you.
Yes, Stephen. Councillor Woodliff, I'm sorry. Yeah, shall we have 10 minutes? Yeah, okay, agree. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. That concludes the representations by the interested parties who have registered to speak. In light of the objections heard today, I would like to ask the applicant whether they wish to withdraw or amend the application in any way. Thank you.
Chair Lady, just to confirm that the application as it stands, including all the conditions proposed by the police.
So the applicant has indicated that they wish to proceed with the application. As a result, I intend to invite closing submissions from the senior licensing officer, the applicant and the interested parties. No new issues will be introduced at this stage. So could I ask the senior licensing officer to make their closing submission, please? Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have anything to add, thank you, Chair. It's just in conclusion, we've received an application for the grant of a sexual entertainment licence. It must be determined by the committee in accordance with statutory provisions, council policy and procedure, having due regard to objections received in respect of the licensable activities. And just to reiterate that objections should not be based on moral grounds or values,
and that we should not consider objections that are not relevant to the grounds set out in paragraph 1.7 of my report. Thank you, Chair. That's everything I've got to add.
Thank you, Anna. Could I ask the applicant to make their closing submission, please, if they have anything to add?
Yes, just a brief, really cleaning up of everything that's been discussed, to emphasise that this premises has had an alcohol licence for the best part of 3 years. This isn't a new venture. This is something that's been in operation for some time. And in those 1,000+ days of the operation, there's been an absence of police intervention, noise abatement notices, environmental health complaints, whatever you want to list it as. There's nothing on the record against the management of these premises. And I would again emphasise that the past performance is the only reliable evidence in front of you. You've just been provided with what I would say anecdotal evidence by the objectors, and there's been no concrete evidence. We touched upon the property prices. There's no clear, cogent evidence to show that people are trying to sell their properties because of the enterprise that's next to them. There's no clear evidence to show that property prices have been reduced because they're not selling because of this enterprise. It's all purely speculation and conjecture. If there was any evidence or inkling of evidence to support the allegations of cannabis use, crime, etc., I'm absolutely convinced, despite the criticism of the police, that the police would be looking at this and would not be effectively agreeing to this application subject to the stringent conditions that they require. You've heard two very different views of the applicant. The residents, or at least the objectors today, have described my client as being somebody who's a bit of a bully, makes false allegations, and you've seen from the police from their report there's somebody that they do trust and somebody that listens and somebody that has amended his application, not at the last minute, but after consultation with the police. I'm still very concerned about the councillor's letter. There's a lot of misinformation in there, which I think has been the catalyst and has crystallised a lot of the complaints from the residents, allegations of breaches of conditions, of criminal activity, with only the barest of anecdotal evidence to support them. In terms of the locality, this club is self-contained, no external signage or visibility. You wouldn't know it was there, what was going on in there, unless you were actually inside the premises. The complaints about the reputation to the village, I would suggest they fall within moral arguments, which are something that you are not allowed to consider today. In terms of threat to the environment, pollution, again, there's lots of statements, but no evidence, empirical or otherwise, to prove otherwise. With the traffic, we had all the same arguments put before. There's no evidence linking any traffic issue to the use of the premises. The premises has been in use for 3 years with an alcohol licence, and there have been no issues or concerns until people have been allowed to object. Essentially, the objections I would ask you to view with a pinch of salt. There's been ample opportunity for objections to have been formally raised with the police and the council prior to today, and they haven't. The only clear, unequivocal, hard evidence you've got is that there's a clean record of management of these premises. And I would say to you today that the safe option for you is to grant the licence with the stringent conditions regulating the activity that goes on there, whether or not it does actually fall within the SEV criteria. And really, I'd ask you to base your decision on the facts of the operation rather than the fears and the perceptions of the business and the activity that is going on. It is a rural location, but this is a very discreet operation. The people that go there want to keep it discreet and quiet, and I don't believe it has the adverse effect on the locality, and that it's more to do with people's fear and perceptions of what's going on than the actual reality. There's nothing else I can usefully add unless you've any questions of me.
Thank you, Mr. Shacklestone, if I said it correctly, hopefully. Do any of the interested parties wish to make a closing submission? I believe no. Thank you. Yes. If you would be brief, yes,
No,
but if there is nothing new to add,
All right, it's just as a result of my going back, my papers are totally out of order. So I'm not going to refer to anything other than the Home Office.
Mr. Taylor, please keep it brief. Yeah,
The Home
thank you.
Office recommendation is that you, as a panel, as a committee, have the right to treat this application on its own merits. I would hope you'd refuse it.
Thank you. Finally, I would like to ask the committee's legal advisor whether there are any other matters to be raised or resolved before the committee retires to begin its deliberation.
Chair, other than obviously where I've jumped in as appropriate, I would have to advise the committee, and I'll do so in open session now, that in my view, the allegations of house prices and how this premises has impacted on them is simply not relevant. There is no sufficient evidence, house sales, etc. That there's no evidence, so you would have to disregard that.
Sorry. In a moment, members of committee will retire to consider the report in private and make the decision. The committee's legal advisor will remain with them, but will at no point take a part in the deliberation. The legal advisor will give legal advice if required, and the decision will contain detail of this advice. Shortly, sorry. So shall we go to chambers, council chambers? Yes, please.
Interested to know why you haven't become a private members club.
Sorry.
Sorry. This part forms part of our deliberation.
That would be a licensing act application. The application before
this application.
It's a request to ask why they haven't considered that, because that would give them a lot more standing in law if they became a private members club.
Not for a sexual entertainment venue. And this is for the sexual entertainment
Right.
venue.
Okay.
Private members club, separate
Yeah.
regime, so we can't cross the two.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Let's move to council chambers.
Just for clarification to those members of the public that are here, you're welcome to stay in here while the members go into the council chamber to deliberate. They will come back and announce their decision when they have made it. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for waiting. The committee has deliberated and considered all the information contained in the agenda pack and all of the representations made today. It has been decided to, Kim?
Thank you, Chair. So the full decision notice will come out to you all in due course, but the committee have decided to grant the licence subject to the conditions included on the police representation. And in addition, they have decided to impose the following conditions. There shall be no employment of commercial performers at the premises. Whenever the premises is open for customers, the gates must be closed except for access and egress. The swimming pool and outside area shall be closed for use at 11 p.m. and there shall be in place a safeguarding policy that must be supplied to the licensing department. Thank you, Chair.
Could I ask, because those conditions are additional, could you go through them more slowly so I can make a clear note?
You will get it virtually tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, then, okay.
As indicated earlier, full details of the decision will be notified in writing to all parties within 5 working days. That concludes this afternoon's business, so I will now close the meeting. Thank you for your attendance. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you.